This is the epitome of a player taking his opportunity. Gotten better and better as this tournament goes. And again, with the reference to next summer.
Tillman for support. It's Malik Tillman.
Mauricio Pochettino has to be saying, I like what I see.
Hello, sunshine. Welcome to the State of the Union, presented by Yerba Madre, the boost you need when you want to win. Drink Yerba Madre. Come to life. I'm Alexi Lalas, and this is where we look at the beautiful game on and off the field through the lens of red, white, and blue-colored glasses. This show is live, as it will be throughout this Gold Cup, following each and every day of action. And this show, we're going to review day 10 and our final day of the group stage, and then we're going to look ahead to the quarterfinals. But first, joining me, as always, my friend, my colleague, my guiding light, David Mosse, a soccer savant and a Fox Soccer researcher and writer extraordinaire. And, oh yeah, he's back, baby. Our special guest, you know him, you love him. Well, you know him. Stu Holden. How are you, gentlemen? Stu, welcome.
Happy to be here. I've had a lot of FOMO on the road watching Mo jump on and Landon. And I'm just keep checking the official appearance count. What, Statman over here. Where do I sit? Still kind of,
You're still way ahead. In fact, you're no longer a guest. We view you as the unofficial third member of this podcast.
Right, exactly. I mean, in late night lore, you would be like, I don't know, who Grodin often sat in, and other people sat in for, what was it, Carson and Leno and all those guys. So
I'm excited to light the candle with you, boys.
All right, so you're excited to light the candle.
Yeah.
Mosse, how we doing, bud?
Doing well, yeah.
We got
stages in the books. It was a lot of fun.
I know we got a couple days off here now, so let's finish strong here. But we had this strange one day of final group play that we're going to get in. Where should we start, my friend?
We're going to take it in reverse order and start with Group B, which was the second group to conclude today. Canada claimed the top spot in Group B, courtesy of a 2-0 win over El Salvador in Houston. Jonathan David missed a penalty in the first half, but then scored in the second half. Tejan Buchanan got one as well. By then, El Salvador were down to 9 because Ortiz and Enriquez got sent off in the first half. Stu, you called this match. Your thoughts?
Where do I start? I mean, this was the most CONCACAF of all CONCACAF-y type of matches. El Salvador were playing with desperation. They had to win the game. This has not been a good El Salvador as of late. Canada, they had the most straightforward path to winning the group and setting a potential semifinal date with the United States. It also set up the best quarterfinal with them with an opportunity to play Guatemala. But El Salvador, I don't know how deep we want to go on this, but they were just beyond disappointing. They have a good international manager in Hernan Dario Gomez, but the red cards that happened in the first half, first time John Strong pulled this stat out, the first time ever in a Gold Cup match, a team has seen 2 red cards in the first half. So just right from that point, the game was essentially done for them. Canada were patient. And honestly, I didn't really care how they won at that point. It was the fact that they won. There was no injuries, got a couple of goals. David's off to the mark in the Gold Cup. And Canada, they've been okay after starting really well the first match. But as we all know, guys, this is when the tournament starts truly now in the quarterfinals.
Yeah, at one point, I think John Strong kind of summed up, at least the way I feel about CONCACAF, in that's, it's La Cosa Nostra, ours, our thing, warts and all. We recognize that. And so when we talk about things being CONCACAF-y, it's with the chaos that comes with it. And yeah, I guess the ugliness, but we own it. And even Jonathan David, after the game, I don't know if you saw his interview, but he was talking about how, yeah, this is CONCACAF. And I think players that play in CONCACAF and grow up playing in CONCACAF recognize that this is kind of what it's going to be. And we're almost protective of it. We recognize that it's not going in a time capsule, and it's not necessarily something that you want to, put out there as the most beautiful thing in the world. But it's our thing, and it takes a level of discipline. And I think that's what was impressive tonight from Canada, who, by the way, made 8 changes. Jesse Marsh back on the sideline after serving his suspension, back where he needs to be. And we should say that Jesse was also cleared of any in the follow-up investigation that happened, any wrongdoing from Jesse. So there's no additional or I guess new suspensions for him. So he's back on the sideline. Made 8 changes to kind of see what this is about, even changing the goalkeeper. To your point, I don't think he's judging a whole lot by this game because of the 2 red cards. And, the game was over when that happened. Second half, it settled down a whole lot. But I mean,
Yeah.
for you guys calling that in the
I was like,
first
my
game, it was like,
goodness.
what's next that's going to happen? And it was kind of on that edge right there.
Mosse, can I ask you something here? Do you feel like games like this, and I do agree with Alexi that, it is kind of our thing, and we love to lean into the CONCACAF nature and CONCACAF after dark. Do you feel that it ends up harming the overall perception of soccer in our region? And I'm asking you specifically because I feel like Copa America at times and CONMEBOL has some of the similar types of issues of games that devolve into chaos. And as we were saying in the Copa America last year, it was like a knife fight. And at the Euros, it was always compared to this, beautiful soccer and tactical battles. And do you feel it ends up kind of harming the perception of where CONCACAF maybe is, or is that just the reality of where we are?
I think it does. I know there's a charm to it, but in some people's eyes, I think it does. Now, Stu, I don't know if you're aware of this, but there's been this running debate between Alexi and our producer, Joel Santos. Joel believes that the rough and tumble nature of this tournament vindicates Christian Pulisic's decision to avoid it. And watching the El Salvador-Canada game tonight, Joel claimed victory on that debate. He feels like he was completely vindicated in that take.
Ridiculous. No.
Not only would I defend it, but I will actually submit to you that the rough and tumble nature of CONCACAF is actually what, whether it's Christian Pulisic or anybody else, needs in order to get better and needs ultimately to show the best of themselves. But you mentioned, South America, where this type of cutthroat and ruthless approach, married certainly with incredible skill, is not only accepted, but it's celebrated. And I think in our country, because obviously we are taking from so many other places and seeing and judging from so many other places, that we're kind of caught in this middle where we if we were to side with one side, it would be almost like we are giving up and we are accepting something that is beneath us. And yet we know we can't side with the other side. And there's a part of me too that says, yeah, but some of that ruthlessness and that knife fight approach is really, really important going on tonight. And so maybe we're just caught in these two minds going forward when it comes to what is the best for us.
Now, Lex, you mentioned Jesse Marsch back on the bench tonight, made 8 changes to the lineup. And Stu, we've talked about Jesse almost every night since this tournament began. He's become such a colorful figure. I know when you were playing for the national team, he was the assistant coach to Bob Bradley, so you know him well. What do you make of Jesse Marsch right now as Canada boss, the approach he's taking, all these veiled shots at the U.S.?
The villain and the heel and all that.
Listen, Jesse is a smart guy. All right, this is a Princeton guy. He knows exactly what he is doing. And what I feel Jesse Marsch is doing is understanding that Canada has a lot of talent and they're very close to really pushing through to be competing consistently with the U.S. and Mexico, not in just qualifying, but actually winning these tournaments. But I think he feels that Canada don't truly believe that themselves. And I think what he's trying to do is create external pressure, create adversity, picking on the moments when the team's not playing well to try to motivate them a little bit more. And I think by lumping pressure on himself, which he's happy to take upon him, but also by putting that on the team and declaring outwardly, look, we're favorites for this tournament. We believe we're one of the most talented teams. We believe we can compete. I think he's trying to message to his players, like, let's go, guys. Let's not be the little brother here in CONCACAF and allow the U.S. and Mexico to be the only teams that have won this outside of us back in 2000. And if we don't win, it's a failure. And I want to see, if I'm Jesse, how my players respond to that. And are they capable of that? You want to find that out now as opposed to next year in 2026 when the expectations are going to be higher. So this is where I differ a little bit on where Canada are right now. I do think they have to win to be seen a little bit differently. I'm still not convinced, like Jesse, and as much as he wants to project, I'm not convinced they can win this tournament.
Well, the analogy of a little brother, I think, is completely apt here in that, sometimes a younger brother or a sibling that's younger, squeaky wheel gets the grease, but sometimes you also have to make yourself seen and heard in order to get some of that attention, some of that love. And I think he recognizes that some of it in the heel personality that he is inhabiting, he's okay with, and he's going to absorb some of that. But I absolutely agree with what you're saying in that he recognizes that they have to believe that they are as good as I think a lot of us do, but that's not necessarily been in their history and their nature. It's not even, I guess, even part of the DNA and the personality. So he's fundamentally trying to change the way that they think so that they can get some, some, not balls, because that's not what it is, but like just some some courage and some arrogance, if you will, to, and good arrogance.
No, I equate it almost to like a movie scene of, you have a guy looking in the mirror and it's like, I am the greatest. The words of affirmation to yourself to kind of make you believe that you're there. I think that goes for a lot of these players, and that they're used to being seen in a certain way for so long. And it's almost like they've just come up so quickly the past couple of years. The talent is undeniable. It's just whether they as a team and individually can believe in the biggest moments to get over the line. Because even going back to the Gold Cup in, was it 2021, where they lost on penalties to the U.S. in the quarters? That might have been 23. It's all
23.
23, yeah. Like, they were actually the better team in that game for long stretches. But yet, when it truly mattered, the U.S. found a way.
Anything else on the Canada game?
No, let's move on to the other match. Honduras also advanced from Group B thanks to a 2-1 win over Curacao and San Jose. They overcame an incredible blooper own goal by their goalkeeper Menjivar, but Alvarez and Palma got their goals. A nice recovery for Honduras after losing their opening match to Canada 6-0.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're going to make a blooper, go big or go home. And he certainly
first
did.
of all, this was a golazo, yeah.
This is, if you're watching here, I mean, this is from outside of the box and is absolutely, if I'm doing a power ranking of goals in this tournament, is way up there.
Well, you would do a power ranking. I mean, you love a power ranking for anything. But how about Honduras taking that 6-0 shellacking from Canada? That was the mistake there from Menjivar, which just punches it, misses it. But Honduras, we were talking about in the same way as Trinidad and Tobago after they got smacked by the U.S. in the first game. So for these teams, and I still don't think Trinidad and Tobago are great. We're going to talk about them a little bit. They're in the same group as Jamaica to maybe go to the World Cup. But some of these countries have an opportunity in front of them for next year, and then didn't necessarily give themselves a great account in the Gold Cup. And it's all about now focus on trying to qualify for next year.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about the thing, but going back just one more time, when those reds started to happen, I know we were asking around, do those apply to upcoming World Cup qualifying? Because we're talking about the Gold Cup, but a lot of these teams that we're talking about this Gold Cup have World Cup qualifying in the next window, and we come to find out that they do. So there are ramifications in the moment that we saw tonight, but also maybe some serious ramifications in terms of losing players for the qualifying for the 2026 World Cup.
I think what we saw from those guys, I don't know if they...
That's true. They might need to get a bunch of new people in anyway. Mosse, anything else?
Earlier in the day, we had the conclusion of Group C, including a Panama-Jamaica game, which provided us with our boost of the game today.
Oh, yeah, you know it, Mosse. Now it's time for the boost of the game presented by Yerba Madre. Yerba Madre, the boost you need when you want to win. Drink Yerba Madre and come to life. All right, Ismael, my friend, big tournament. Previous tournament, big tournament. This tournament, scoring a bunch of goals. My goodness. Ismael Díaz, first hat trick. It's the first hat trick of the tournament, right?
Correct. So Panama advanced as Group C winners, claiming a 4-1 win over Jamaica in Austin today. Ismael Díaz with a hat trick. He is the top scorer in the tournament with 5 goals. It's his second career Gold Cup hat trick. He got one against Qatar in 2023. Panama stroll into the quarterfinals, 3 wins out of 3. Jamaica crash out of the tournament.
Yeah. Okay. So first thoughts here, and we absolutely are going to give Panama their flowers. They deserve it. But I also think that we kind of expected Panama to go through. We've talked so much about how much they have improved, and I remember back a couple World Cups ago when they first got to a World Cup and the tears streaming down their face in the anthem, and they didn't get out of the group and they lost all their games. But I guess it was a marker that they have kicked on since then, and now they are, I think, one of the elite teams in CONCACAF, and they're cruising through the tournament as a lot of people predicted. But it's not a but for Panama. This is a but about Jamaica. I think Jamaica, certainly so far in this tournament, is the biggest disappointment given our expectations that we have, given the talent that they have, given the history that they have. And I don't know if you watch the show today, you will have seen that I'm done. I'm done in terms of calling them the Reggae Boys. They have sullied the Reggae Boys moniker for me. I am taking it away from them. They are no longer the Reggae Boys, because in order to be the Reggae Boys, you have to live up to a certain level. And this is just pathetic from a Jamaica team. And there are people that now are worrying about whether Jamaica, by the way, in a cycle where the United States, Canada, and Mexico aren't involved in CONCACAF qualifying, if Jamaica's actually going to be able to figure out a way after this diabolical performance in the Gold Cup of qualifying for the World Cup.
You look at some of the talent and the players that they have, it almost seems crazy to think about they're that bad. But now you're going to be asking questions to your point about Steve McLaren as a manager. Do you roll with him now through qualifying in the third phase, looking at their group and looking from what, if we're judging from the Gold Cup, what I've seen from Curacao, I would pick Curacao to qualify ahead of Jamaica.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. I just feel when I'm watching this team on the play, it's not necessarily the talent. It's just that they can't fight through adversity. The personality is missing, to your point of playing with that swagger that we're used to, and going back to Gold Cups where they knocked the U.S. out in 2016. Whatever that was, 2017. Then in 2019, they're in the final. They lose to a Jordan Morris goal in that match. That was when we were like, wow, Jamaica's the next team below U.S., Canada, Mexico. It was Jamaica. Well, now Panama have jumped them. There's other teams that are jumping them as well. And I just don't feel confident. I wouldn't be putting my money on Jamaica qualifying.
They're not organized physically. They don't even
they're strolling around the field. Everybody's pointing and yelling at each other.
Mistakes all over. I mean, even Andre Blake, who's been wonderful over the past decade. I mean, he should have done better today. So, Mosse, what's ailing Jamaica? What's the deal here?
I submit to you that if you hold up Panama and Jamaica's squads side by side, on paper, in terms of pedigree, Jamaica's is better. And yet, to your point, Panama have clearly emerged as that other CONCACAF team besides the big three of U.S., Mexico, and Canada. It's not Jamaica right now. Yeah, the chemistry is all off. I've never rated Steve McLaren all that highly as a manager. So
he didn't even look like he wanted to be there. And to your point, the Federation of Jamaica, if they have any inkling that this is going south and this is a problem, they have a responsibility to make a change. Do everything that you possibly can to qualify. So if you don't think that Steve McLaren is the guy to do it, and he certainly didn't prove it in this tournament, then you got to make a change.
And to add insult to injury, I know you are not a Bob Marley fan, so you think Jamaica crap at soccer and you don't buy that.
It's another podcast, but you're absolutely right, my friend. So,
oh my God, we don't have time for that.
Can I just go back to Panama for a second? Thomas Rodriguez scored today, his third of the tournament. I think you should consider him for your player power rankings.
Give the people a peek behind the curtain here.
This was a very amusing moment. Lex put together a power rankings of the 10 best players at this Gold Cup, and he meant to include Thomas Rodriguez, but he told our graphics person, I want Rodriguez on Panama, and she instead put Jose Rodriguez, who's another player on Panama, who has 0 goals and 0 assists in this tournament, and that's when it's appeared on television, so Lex had to roll with it. So it's become a running joke for us.
I mean, it's a Rodriguez.
It was like the Gronk skit where they set him up with the player that didn't even exist, exactly. And they tossed it to him. They're like, what do you think about this guy? Oh, he's a great linebacker.
It's all right. It's all right. I mean, we do a lot of these power rankings.
But I guess also, if you just last thing on this game, if you're saying, and I probably agree with you that Jamaica on paper, if you look at some of the individual talent and the clubs that some of these guys play at versus where Panama's are, then you're saying, okay, well, who's the better team? And then who's the better coach? I mean, Thomas Christensen, what a job he has
I know he's
done.
A favorite of yours.
Yeah, since he's taken over Panama. And they just have such a clear identity in the way that they play, the understanding of the roles. And it's not, look, of course, they scored 3 goals today, but when they play the U.S., they just play, solid defensively, counterattack. They know what they have to do. They recognize who they are. They know what their level is. They know what they can achieve if they play in a certain way. And everybody buys into that, as opposed to what I'm seeing from Jamaica is we got some individual guys. They might produce a moment. They might score a goal. If not, who cares? Whatever. We're going to walk around and, we're going to be crap, which is what they've been this entire tournament. So my hope for Jamaica and for Jamaican fans is that this is a big wake-up call for them. We'll see what happens. Does McLaren stay? Does he not? If he does, the margins now are very thin for them qualifying for a World Cup. And what better opportunity in a 48-team World Cup when the U.S., Mexico, and Canada are already in? If you don't qualify, it'd be an absolute travesty.
Can you imagine if you're Jamaican or a Jamaican player or a Jamaican fan and the World Cup comes next summer and you're not there given the circumstances that we talked about? So to your point, I don't know what this was. It could be a harbinger of bad things to come if they continue on this way, or maybe it was just one of those moments where just everything went to hell in a handbasket. What should we go to now, Mosse?
And then the other team to advance from Group C was Guatemala. They beat Guadeloupe 3-2 in Houston in a fun game. Pinto, Escobar, and Rubin with their goals. Pluban and Faeton scored for Guadeloupe. Luis Fernando Tena doing a nice job. Guatemala, they've had nice fan support at this tournament. They've been frisky so far.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm with Lex. I just don't see a way in which they beat Canada.
That's the thing.
This is where the tournament really starts. And you look at some of the teams that have qualified for the next stage. If I was doing a power rankings, I've never been asked to do a power rankings. Alexi's boxed that territory. You know, I'm a little bitter.
Can you whine more?
No,
Man.
but I mean,
all right, Mosse, give us the quarterfinals because
okay.
let's go. Let's get to that.
All right. So the quarterfinals are Saturday and Sunday. Saturday in Glendale, we've got Panama, Honduras, and Mexico, Saudi Arabia. The winners of those two games will meet each other in the semis. And then Sunday in Minneapolis, Canada, Guatemala, and USA, Costa Rica. The winners of those games will meet in the semis.
All right. Guatemala is the easiest game, right? On paper.
Yeah.
And then you
Jesse
probably
Marsh
say,
and company are sitting pretty going, yeah, we'll take Guatemala in the quarters.
Then I would say after that, Honduras.
Yeah. I don't think
Costa Rica, and then probably Saudi Arabia. Maybe of the.
I think Mexico has the hardest opponent.
Yeah.
I still think that they get through against Saudi Arabia. I think Panama takes care of Honduras. I think Canada takes care of
So we're
Guatemala.
not really calling an upset in the quarterfinals.
No,
Yeah,
I don't think there's
so
any
either.
upsets. I don't think there's any upsets. Like I said, I think Canada is sitting pretty. I don't think that this is a great Costa Rica team, and we could talk about that game and kind of preview what's going on there. Again, that game is Sunday doubleheader in Minneapolis with the Canada-Guatemala game. So what do you want to start with?
So let's zero in on the U.S.-Costa Rica match live on Fox. Lex and I talked about it last night. Some interesting lineup decisions for Pochettino, including in goal. Matt Freese made the mistake against Haiti. Landon Donovan thinks you got to go with Matt Turner in the knockout stage. Maurice Edu thinks you stick with Matt Freese. Where do you come down on that, Stu Holden?
I've gone back and forth on this a little bit, but I just think that you're rolling with Freese. I don't think Matt Turner has done anything. What have you done for me lately? Janet Jackson.
There you go.
Matt Turner has barely played a game this year. And sure, you could say he's the incumbent because of what he has done previously. But I think what Pochettino has set out in his tenure now, I don't know if he felt this way necessarily when he started, but I think as he's gotten to learn and understand the pool and seeing guys pull out of camps, I think he's kind of going in the direction of guys that are earning it are going to play. And Matt Turner has to get a move this summer, which it seems like he will, but he has to play and he has to earn it to get back into the lineup. Now, Matt Freese is getting an opportunity because he's decided, look, I know what I've gotten Turner. Schulte's out, Steffen's out. But I just don't think that you're going to give a guy 3 games and then say after the group stage, you know what? I'm going to change everything I've done at that point. The relationship you started to build with the back four, with the center backs that I'm going to play, the left backs, he made a mistake. Matt Turner's made plenty of mistakes. Every goalkeeper has made a mistake. Every defender has made a mistake. I just think what a message that would send to a guy after you make one mistake in a game that you ultimately ended up winning, that you're going to lose your spot in the quarterfinals. I don't think Freese has done anything outside of that to jeopardize. And I don't think if you're playing Turner or Freese, it jeopardizes your ability to win that game. So I would go with Freese.
Stu, we haven't had you on the pod since, this tournament began. And we've talked a lot about this U.S. team and what it is, what it isn't, the current situation with this U.S. team. And you mentioned Pochettino, and I'd love to get your thoughts about what do you think of Pochettino? You've had the time to you've spent time with him. You've been on the road with him. You've kind of seen him, and we're all trying to get into his head.
Yeah,
especially relative to all the drama and the craziness that kind of occurred with Pulisic and where we are a year out. I get the feeling, and again, this is from afar, and you're closer to it, being on the road. I get the feeling that his eyes have been widened. His mind has been expanded in some of the realities of what he is facing. And I get the feeling that he doesn't suffer fools. And I get the feeling at times he's held his tongue relative to things that may make him crazy. Again, this is from afar.
I think from afar, you're spot on.
Okay.
And that's being close to him. We've had multiple meetings with him ahead of some of these matches and getting an opportunity to ask him stuff on the record, off the record, just getting to get a feel for his personality and where he stands. And I think one of the things I just said, I think what I've gathered in getting to know him a little bit is he truly values character, personality on and off the field. And he himself is learning through these matches and moments on the field, but also in training of guys that he can count on. And I think was the biggest miss of not having some of your star guys at this tournament. star guys previously. Are they going to be star guys now for Pochettino? Because for him to get a better understanding of what these guys can bring, how do they make the best group? And I think that's what has been his secret sauce in his coaching career before at Chelsea, at Espanyol, at PSG, is finding the right blend of personalities and people that create the best team. And it's not always the best 23 players or 26 players. It's the best 23, 26 people that make up a team, and the different parts of that all come together as one machine and work. And so what's going to be very fascinating for me is coming out of this Gold Cup, who are the guys that now not only are in the next set of friendlies and looking with an eye on the World Cup, but actually guys that can genuinely start those matches. And I even think I'm fascinated to see as we look forward to Costa Rica, like center midfield, all of a sudden becomes a very interesting decision for me. Coming in, if you looked at the names that were on the sheet, you would have said, okay, Tyler Adams and Johnny. Guy playing in the Premier League, guy playing in La Liga, guy that's about to make a $30 million move to Atlético Madrid, allegedly. Or are you going to roll with two guys in MLS? Whoa, blasphemy. Luca De La Torre and Sebastian Berhalter, who, De La Torre wasn't great in the second game against Saudi Arabia. Berhalter, I feel like, has shown a little bit of stuff that I think Pochettino likes. He's got personality. He plays with an intensity. He's getting stuck in. Like, he does all the little things.
And set pieces.
Yeah. Like, that's a game changer in knockouts. So, I don't know.
Mosse, has your perception of Pochettino changed over the course of this Gold Cup at all?
Not really.
Okay.
I'm still in wait and see mode with him. But
in what sense? The wait and see is what? If
he was brought in, he was brought in theory to elevate the U.S. and I haven't seen him do that quite yet. So we'll see if what happens. Obviously, next summer the proof will be in the pudding. But yeah, to your point about some interesting lineup decisions against Costa Rica, Mo thinks same lineup from the first two games except Tyler Adams in place of De La Torre. And I asked him if any of the players that came in against Haiti did enough to stick. So that would be Token over Arfston or Aronson over Luna or Quinn Sullivan over McGlynn. Did you see anything from those guys that would keep them in the starting lineup?
I don't think so. I think that's probably the more accurate look because he's going to go back to that.
Now, let me ask you this. Costa Rica, we know, very shorthanded due to suspension and injury. You've got Madrigal and Lassiter hurt, and then Ugalde and Mora suspended. You guys both think with those guys out, this is a relatively comfortable game for the U.S., or am I putting words in your mouth?
Yeah.
So you have three players, Adams, Luna, and Berhalter, on yellows. If they were to get booked, they would miss the semifinal against, you guys think, Canada. Is there any thought there of leaving some of those guys out? Or no,
not.
This is the knockout stage. You put your best
This is knockout
team.
stage. You play your
in
best
game. If
Look,
there's an opportunity, you get them off. But
U.S. are better than Costa Rica, but I've seen enough of these games to know that this is not going to be a straightforward 4-0 U.S. turn it on in style and absolutely rout Costa Rica. Costa Rica are going to do a lot of what El Salvador tried to do without going over the line of being physical, getting stuck in, disrupting the rhythm of play, getting numbers behind the ball, frustrating the U.S. and chances. And I just don't think this group, in this player profile in this team right now, we have a lot of guys that can beat people off the dribble 1v1. In fact, there's not that many in our pool in general outside of Pulisic and Tim Weah probably. Tillman has been fantastic, but he's still a kind of combined type of guy. So if people sit deep against you, it means you have to try to solve and find different ways. And I think that Agyemang becomes a very important player again.
One concern for the U.S., I do think Keylor Navas got his mojo back in that last group game.
That's true.
Couple of those saves he made against Mexico were unbelievable. So he's a guy that could go out on Sunday and stand on his head and make that game a lot more complicated than it should be.
Should we look at some potential moves out there when it comes to some of these guys?
Yes, a lot of the players we just mentioned are being linked to clubs this summer. We'll start with Malik Tillman, obviously coming off a very good season with PSV. He is being linked to Leverkusen, who are no longer managed by Xabi Alonso, who's off to Real Madrid. It's now Eric Ten Hag there. What do you make of that, Malik Tillman to Leverkusen?
I love it.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah. If it ends up being true, that is awesome. It's a good move. And even with Xabi Alonso not there, this is still, he's kind of left his touch there, and the profile of this team, because of what he did over the last couple of years, certainly has improved. And this is what a player who plays in the Eredivisie wants to do. This is the type of move, not stereotypical, but traditional.
Yeah, and you know what I would say for Malik Tillman, it's a great example of a player that came up through Bayern's youth system, recognized I've got to get a move to play, found the right fit for him in PSV Eindhoven, scored a bunch of goals, has had a great season, really just taken his game to the next level this year with PSV, who, by the way, was recruited by Ernie Stewart, a former U.S. soccer sporting director, who clearly saw enough in him to say, like, we're going to get him, we're going to bring Pepe and these guys to this team, and is now going to go back to the Bundesliga in a much bigger stature than perhaps he would have gone if he'd left Bayern and gone to a mid-table or lower-table Bundesliga time at that point in his career. He's allowed himself to develop. His personality and his level now with the U.S. has gone up another level this summer in the Gold Cup. And my hope is that he goes to Leverkusen and just keeps going, because he's going to be one of the big winners from this tournament.
Let me go to our resident La Liga expert on this next one. Johnny Cardoso, after impressing with Real Betis, sounds like he is off to Atlético Madrid.
You know, Johnny, I believe his debut was against Mallorca in Mallorca for Real Betis, and he played lights out. He was unbelievable. He's been such a solid player.
This is Johnny Cardoso?
Johnny Cardoso. Yeah, I know. But that's the thing, right? The difference between a player for club and country, and I think a league and a style that fits the type of player he is. And when he came from Brazil, you and I were still talking about this a little, but wow, Betis is a big club, and how's he going to fit in? And the system that he plays, and the time, and the combination play, and the style of football in Spain is perfect for him. Atletico Madrid don't necessarily play the same type of style as other teams, but that's another step up for him now, to be going from a guy that's pretty much playing every week for Betis to all of a sudden a team where you might be rotating because of the amount of games that you're playing. But wouldn't it be crazy to think about from a U.S. soccer perspective that we would have a guy that would be a $30 million player for Atletico Madrid playing in the Champions League, and he can't get a game for the U.S.?
No, it would be crazy on the surface, but it would absolutely be a perfect example of what you said, where it's not the best players, it's the best collection of players. And Mauricio Pochettino and the U.S. men's national team in general, for a player like Johnny, as good as he is, he's not good enough where you fundamentally change to adapt to him. So he's going to have to find a way to adapt to the circumstances in the national team. And the reality is that he has not. The form that he has shown with club that has gotten him called into the national team, he's not been able to transfer it. And whatever it is, when he gets on that plane or when he puts on that shirt, it goes out the window. And he better get his act together when it comes to the national team, or I don't think he's going to be on the roster next summer. And it would blow people's minds and everyone scream and yell. But maybe it goes back to what we were talking about when it comes to Pochettino. It would be like the quintessential Pochettino to say, no, good player. I love watching him play for the club, but it doesn't work for us. And it's not for lack of trying. He's been given plenty of opportunities out there. I hope that doesn't happen. I hope that he finds a way to get on that plane and bring whatever he's doing with him. And I hope he plays when he gets to Atletico.
But do you feel then it's the duty of Pochettino to find a way to get the best out of him? Because clearly this is a very talented player. Like, you don't get signed by Atletico Madrid because you're just an okay guy. And I do agree with you from the perspective that he's not, let's say, Pulisic's level, where you're like, we got to find the best way to get this guy in the best spots to be the most effective because he's a match winner. Johnny's not in that position, a guy that's going to win you games by just pure individual brilliance in any given moment and smack one in the top corner from 50 yards. But I do think he's a guy.
He's not playing him out of position. It's not as if this is a guy that just plays on the ground and we're a team that only plays on the air. And so we fundamentally have to change. I mean, it's still soccer. At some point, you have to be able to adjust. And I don't think that Pochettino and this national team is playing such a wildly ridiculous type of style of soccer that Johnny Cardoso can't adapt to it.
Which I think it's unfortunate for him in a sense that he picked up this illness right before this tournament started, because maybe he would have started that first match and maybe this would have been the run of games that he had needed to try to do what Tillman and Richards and these guys, these big winners, have done. So all of a sudden now, I like this from Pochettino that he's doing this. He's saying, look, Berhalter's playing well, and Tyler Adams is coming in and playing well, and these guys are going to play. So Johnny, like, you're going to play 20 minutes off the bench, which I think to him would be frustrating, but the team's winning.
I will say, as an industrious central midfielder, there's no greater compliment than Diego Simeone being interested in you. And it would be fascinating to see him on that team next season alongside Rodrigo de Paul and Barrios and Coque and guys like that. But clearly Simeone didn't watch the Turkey friendly.
All right, what other news is there when it comes
Well,
to these players?
There's a couple more that just from listening to you guys before we started taping, I don't think you guys are as high on. Patrick Agyemang, who we know plays for Charlotte FC, being linked to English second division side Derby County.
I don't hate it. I think the interesting
Is
question.
it a step up?
Yeah, I think so.
Really?
Yeah, I think because of the opportunity for him to potentially play in the Premier League is
Okay, so it's
is the next step up.
stepping stone to something.
I think I think for a young player, it is a step up in that at this point in his career, it's a different type of challenge. And I'm not saying that the level is necessarily that much better than MLS. Might be the same type of level as the English Championship, but it puts him in an environment, in a situation where he's going to be forced to grow, to compete at a different way, that we're going to see a little bit more from him. And I think we'll find out maybe where his level is at that level, to see if, because clearly scoring goals in the championship does not guarantee you a place in the national team. Hello, Josh Sargent. I mean, the guy had a lights out year coming back from injury for Norwich, and yet Pochettino left him off for footballing decisions. So I don't know where that leaves Agyemang.
It will test him, though. I mean, that's a slog over the championship.
The championship is tough, but I think that's also why Derby have recruited him, because one of the things I've loved, and I don't love some of the slander that I've been seeing from Patrick Agyemang, because sure, he looks a little unconventional at times, and he's a little bit lanky, and the ball gets caught under his feet, and he falls over. But he makes stuff happen on the field. And because of his running off the ball, his hold-up play, he's in the box and stuff just happens around him. That is a good quality. Ultimately, you have to hit the back of the net, which he has done 5 times in 9 games for the U.S. I don't care how it's happened. He's scored goals. And is he going to be the starting striker next year? I don't know. Probably not. But he has done enough to me to be in that conversation now when we're talking about the front three. And I think for Pochettino, too, he's jumped Vasquez, he's jumped Sargent, and he's in form. So
this is going to sound like a slight against Agyemang, but it really, I think it's just some clarity and some reality. The fact that we are talking about Agyemang right now as even potentially being a starter for the national team next summer, that's not necessarily a good thing. We should have much more definitive and I think much better options, but we don't. And for Agyemang, that's a great opportunity. And to your point, he has done what he has been asked to do in terms of getting the goals. So if you want the numbers, there are the numbers, but he's done so much more. Is he the most graceful player on the field? No. Is he going to come in for criticism? Yeah. Welcome to life. All right. Welcome to big time, if you will. People are going to say things to your face. People are going to say things online. People are going to say things behind your back, in email, on the phone, on social media, on wherever, on the radio, on TV. That's just part of the deal, and you're going to have to find a way to deal with. And I think he's going to be fine when it comes to that. But ultimately, all I care about is that he's a good soccer player and that he puts the ball on the back of the net. And so far, so good. But he's not even close to the finished product, and I don't know if he ever will be the product that ultimately will make me comfortable going into the World Cup next summer if he's there.
The last thing, look, Gold Cup group stage historically, last Gold Cup, Jesus Ferreira scored back-to-back hat-tricks and then couldn't score against the bigger teams. If you get it done against Costa Rica and then Canada and then Mexico or Panama, whoever in the final, like that carries more weight to me than what you did in the group stage. These are the games that are going to matter, and you're ultimately going to get judged on.
To be fair, he did score against Canada in the Nations League third place match. Now, you mentioned he's young. Are we still considering 24 years old young?
No. He's 24 years old, but he's taking a different
in the
path.
U.S. Yes.
All right, we got to move on here.
A
couple more things that are happening.
Timmy Weah potentially leaving Juventus to go to Nottingham Forest.
I mean, if I'm giving that a grade in terms of how excited it makes me, it's like a C-.
Why is that? I mean, Nottingham Forest is a team that's going to be playing European competition next year, almost qualified for the Champions League. Potentially selling Anthony Elanga, who would play ahead of him, to Newcastle was the rumor. He's going to have to fight for his place. I mean, there's the risk that he's running that he's going to be in the same role he's at Juventus, which is playing 20 minutes off the bench and starting maybe 6 or 7 games.
Do you want look, I'm all for competition, but less than a year away. Because, again, it's not about whether we like the player or anything like that. If it's specifically about doing well next summer, do you want players having to fight for their place? Not that anybody is just gifted it, but if there's a question as to whether you, and fighting for your place, sometimes it doesn't even come down to how much you work.
Yeah.
It could be a million different things. The coach likes you, doesn't like you, injury here, there, different stuff that happens.
I would like a player that isn't afraid of that possibility.
Yeah.
I think the reality at any top team, and he's been in a team that's been in the Champions League in Juventus, and is that a lot of these squads are bigger. There's competition for places at all times. Look, I made a move January of 2010, 6 months before the World Cup, to Bolton, and I didn't even get on the bench for the first 2 months. And inside I was thinking, oh man, did I take too big of a risk in this moment? And was that the wrong decision? But in essence, it ended up being an opportunity for me to prove myself and fight. And I was thinking about the bigger picture as well, in that, look, the possibility of playing in a World Cup was huge. But for me, my dream from a kid had also been to play in the Premier League, and I had that opportunity to finally do so, and I didn't want to turn that down. And it all worked out in the end, but there was that risk of making a move 6 months before the World Cup that you don't play, and all of a sudden you fall out of favor. I don't think that's what this is with Tim Weah.
You mentioned that Matt Turner needs to go somewhere where he can play. He looks to be headed to Lyon, where he'll link up with Tanner Tessmann, but some bad news for the French club.
Crazy news, right?
Yes. They've had all sorts of financial issues, and it was announced today they're going to be relegated to the second division. Now they are appealing. Lyon are owned by an American, John Textor, who also owns Botafogo. And it's farcical how much he's tried to fudge the money between those two clubs. Botafogo bought this player, Luis Enrique, for lots of money. And he played for Botafogo. He never stepped foot in Lyon. And then they turned around and sold him to Zenit for a huge amount, 35 million euros. And he tried to claim that was a Lyon sale. He somehow changed the paperwork at the last minute to make him a Lyon player so he could report that as money that Lyon made in sales, because he knew that they were dealing with financial fair play issues. Botafogo signed Thiago Almada for big money. Lyon were under a transfer ban, and all of a sudden, mid-season, he just switched from Botafogo to Lyon, and this guy, John Textor, tried to claim, no, he was originally a Lyon signing who was loaned to Botafogo, but it was Botafogo that paid the money for him, so how does that work? So this guy's been trying all sorts of accounting tricks, and it finally caught up with him today. They're going to appeal, but I'm sorry, from what I know from the case,
you think this is going to be upheld?
Yeah, I think so, because this guy Texter has been very shady. You know, this whole issue of, multi-club ownership, we talk about it with City Football Group and all the rest, but this has been one of the most farcical cases of how much this guy has tried to fudge the money among all his
there's
various
one thing
clubs.
with the FAs and also UEFA have made a big push around financial fair play, whatever number of years ago now, but because of situations like this, they recognize, and they didn't want big teams, any team for that matter, being in a position to put themselves bankrupt. And when the revenue doesn't match up, and France have had a lot of issues with their TV rights, revenue. It's a one-team league in essence at times, with PSG winning. Yeah, I would imagine if the French FA as well said, upon review, even giving Lyon a warning many months ago and said, you have to have your finances in order by this moment, and what they submitted still said that it wasn't good enough. It doesn't look good. But
and from a practical perspective, if you're someone like Matt Turner, if they get,
I would think that would have to change your decision.
Tom Bogert saying no, he would still go.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
French second division. I mean, to go from
right. I mean, everyone's saying you just. Needs to
could
play,
could you say this for Matt Turner at this point? If he ends up playing second division French football, from leaving his time in MLS when he was a really high quality shot stopper, which he is, but then to go to a backup at Arsenal, to barely playing at Nottingham Forest, a run of 15, 20 games, then losing his place, then going to Crystal Palace as a backup, and now going to the second division in France. I mean, what are we doing here?
Yeah,
come back to MLS.
It's bad, exactly. That's exactly what.
Can we say it's cost him the starting job for the national team? Are you ready to say Matt Fries is the starter right now?
I don't think I'm ready to say that Matt Fries is.
But Matt Turner isn't.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's absolutely fair to say. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, I mentioned that this guy who owns Lyon, John Textor, is also the owner of Brazilian club Botafogo, who are involved in the Club World Cup. Yesterday, I attended a Botafogo Atlético Madrid match at the Rose Bowl. Atlético Madrid won 1-0 on a goal by Griezmann, but Botafogo advanced because Atlético needed to win by 3. So that gets us into the Club World Cup, which we've been talking about every night on this podcast. As far as the MLS teams the last couple days, Seattle concluded their campaign with 3 losses out of 3. They fell 2-0 to PSG. Kvaratskhelia and Hakimi with the goals. LAFC exiting the competition tonight. After losing their first two, they did earn a draw with Flamengo, 1-1, Buanga and Wallacion with the goals late. The one MLS team advancing is Inter Miami, and they almost topped their group. They were leading Palmeiras 2-0, Allende, and an incredible Luis Suarez goal, but then Paulinho and Mauricio late for Palmeiras finished 2-2, so Palmeiras advanced in first place, which is costly for Inter Miami. It means they have to play PSG in the round of 16. But overall thoughts on the MLS clubs, and I'm going to ask you about the tournament as a whole.
For the MLS clubs, I think it's about as expected. I think Miami, although they're not the MLS Cup incumbent champion, they were the Supporters Shield champion. They have Messi, they have Suarez, they have the talent, and they have the high-end power that you could see could win them some games, the way that Messi scores the free kick. And they just have that little bit of extra X factor that's taken them to the next round, which I think is awesome for MLS teams. And you're going to get to see them against PSG in a competitive game. That's going to be quite a scene and an opportunity. The tournament as a whole, I've honestly, I was skeptical going in. I've enjoyed it. I just think, the South American fans are carrying the tournament, as well as the North African fans and some of the Asian fans. And it's just a reminder that, soccer exists outside of Europe, by the way. I think Europeans forget that sometimes because the Champions League is massive and most of the best players and the best.
From the guy advocating for Agyemang to go to Derby County.
I think it's a change of scenery. And also he's going to get paid more money. Sometimes as a young MLS player, you got to leave to get the money you want. And then maybe you can come back and get paid more.
You've been around and you've seen and heard us talk about this legendary insecurity, inferiority complex when it comes to American soccer, and raise my hand at times too. But what's been interesting is to see it kind of manifest in this tournament from a South American perspective, and to see them kind of promote themselves and, like we said, use it as a referendum. But, just to kind of say, hey, we are here. We are as good, maybe even at times even better, and certainly off the field, we're going to make it a party and something that people want to be a part of.
Brazilian clubs, by the way, had a better winning percentage against European opposition than MLS opposition in the Club World Cup group stage. But it's interesting to me, when the idea for this competition was first introduced, the main issue people had was the calendar, that you're adding more games. And that issue remains, and we can debate that, and people can come down on different sides of that debate. But then as we approached the tournament and you started to see reports of low ticket sales, then there was this second layer to the debate, and people saying the interest level isn't high enough to justify this. The public isn't buying it. On that score, it's been hit or miss. But I think on balance, it's tilted more towards the people that were in favor of this competition. I think it's been the general buzz and interest level has been high enough that I think you could call it a success. Listen, I like I said, I went to a game at the Rose Bowl. There were 20,000 people in a 90,000 seat stadium. It was not a great atmosphere. But then later on, I turned on the TV, I watched Inter Miami Palmeiras at Hard Rock, and it was electric. So you get the right teams in the right venue at the right time, and you're getting some great crowds. Sometimes you get the wrong teams in the wrong venue, and you get some sparse crowds. But do you agree with me that on balance, it's been a success from an interest level standpoint?
I think you have to keep reminding yourself, this is the first iteration of this tournament. It's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. It's been by far and away a success based on what I think maybe their expectations were. Now, I know FIFA always shoot for the stars when it comes to this stuff.
And it's still a work in progress.
It's still a work in progress. I think it'll expand. I think you're going to have more interest. I do think we have a problem in the United States at times where there maybe is a bit of soccer fatigue. Everybody wants to bring their soccer to our shores and capitalize on the market that we have here and the prices people will pay for tickets. I think they've mispriced some of the tickets. I think they could sell some more of these games. I have a whole laundry list of stuff that I think they could improve on, but generally, I think it's been an overwhelming success, and it's going to continue to grow.
There is an enthusiasm gap between Europe and everybody else, which is detracting a little bit from the tournament. You just hope that the Europeans get into it more. Even in this edition, maybe as we get into the knockout stages, and certainly in subsequent editions, there's talk of Spain potentially hosting the next one, so I think that would help in that regard.
A couple of things when it comes to the FIFA Club World Cup. And I know, like you were saying, there's some people that just want to see the world burn, just want to scream and yell about different stuff. Yes, there is a disparity sometimes that we have seen in terms of the crowds out there. But in general, the crowds have been good. Some have been massive. And the reality is that thousands of people, whether they are from the United States, have had a great time at the FIFA World Cup, or whether they are thousands of people that have traveled in from other countries to the U.S. this summer, legally and safely. And they had a unique American vacation experience through the lens of this FIFA Club World Cup. And that bodes well, I think, for next summer. Can it improve? Yes. And like we said, it is an absolute work in progress. And I think it's only going to get maybe not bigger in terms of expansion of teams, but who knows? Maybe it's bigger in expansion of teams, but certainly better. And it'll be interesting to see when people are looking at this, where this next one ends up going, because it's going to come every 4 years.
Last item, Stu, today is the anniversary of the U.S.'s 2-0 win over Spain in the semifinals of the 2009 Confederations Cup.
Yeah.
Now, that was an interesting summer for you because the U.S. sent an A team to the Confederations Cup, a B team to the Gold Cup. You went to the Gold Cup, and you were one of the players that impressed in that tournament. That helped you get you on the plane to South Africa in 2010. But I'm sure you were also keeping tabs on what the A team was doing at the Confederations Cup. A lot of people think when you consider the level of opposition, that might be the best U.S. win ever. I would say it's either that or your Argentina 95 Copa America win. To me, it's those two in terms of the quality of the opponent.
I mean, I worked that tournament. I was at ESPN at the time. And
the Confeds Cup?
Yeah, and it was incredible. I mean,
let's not forget the U.S. led in the final against Brazil, too.
It was 2-0 at the half. Yeah, Brazil came back.
Bob Bradley rightly is incredibly proud of that, and he'll tell you, and as will a lot of people that participated in it. And, while we talk about it, at the time, people registered, but the reality is it would be so much bigger if it happened today with the information age that we live in, and I guess the thirst now for something like that.
Can I go on a little bit of a rant?
Oh, of course.
Please.
You don't even have to preface like that.
I was okay getting rid of the Confederations Cup. It was always a tournament that lacked a bit of a purpose to me, but it happened. When you ask European clubs to list off all the trophies they've won, they count Cup Winners' Cups, even though that competition doesn't exist anymore. And there's this effort to airbrush the Confederations Cup out of history, which is sensitive to me because Brazil won it a bunch of times. And to act like those don't even count as trophies is ridiculous to me. I remember when we covered the 2021 Copa America going into the final. Remember the big story was Messi was trying to win his first trophy with Argentina. And John Strong kept saying, Neymar too trying to win his first trophy with Brazil. I wanted to strangle John Strong. What are you talking about? He won the 2013 Confederations Cup, beat a loaded Spain team in front of 80,000 people at the Maracanã in the final. It counts.
It counts. But
you hear that, John Strong?
Right?
Exactly. It counted.
But relevance is important. So this FIFA Club World Cup, it is a work in progress, including to gain relevance. And so I think when this comes to a conclusion, I don't think anybody's going to forget. And I don't think anybody, regardless of how snooty or snobby or dismissive some may be, and usually it's the ones that are bombing out in the group stage or they say, oh, we didn't really care about it. The winner of this FIFA Club World Cup absolutely is going to celebrate this, and I think will be recognized for the accomplishment.
Can we just say, too, look, the European teams were the ones that came in skeptical because they are the ones that didn't really need this tournament for the money, the prestige, whatever. They already feel they play the biggest tournaments in their fans, and it's like, oh, another tournament, and everybody's using us to raise the level, and they need the Real Madrids and the Man Cities. I think what we forget sometimes, and I was joking a little bit about the Euro snobbiness of that, is one of the big missions has been of Gianni Infantino, which I do like, is to grow the game around. And what I mean by that is when you see an Auckland City and a team that's full of half amateur players had to take paid time off from their actual jobs in their country to come and play in this tournament. And I was full sicko mode watching them against Bayern Munich today on the bike and watching them celebrate tying against Bayern Munich. Who they play? Boca Juniors. Boca Juniors. They tied Boca Juniors. And what
they got their ass kicked by Bayern Munich.
They got their ass kicked 10-0. But what that point means for a financial standpoint for them, just for qualifying, the amount of money they got, and then for getting a point, you could see them celebrating that point because for them, that's like substantial money in their pockets. And this is the story we will be telling next summer at the World Cup, in an expanded World Cup, where maybe we get a blowout or two. But by the way, there will be nations at a World Cup that historically we would never have expected to have that opportunity. And as you always say, World Cups change your life. Yeah. And that's what this is about. If we can take some of the other snobbery outside and the prestige of this club and this club, sure, these aren't the best teams in the world always, but they're part of this bigger pot and growing the game and opportunity. And I think more soccer is good soccer.
Amen, Stu Holden. We got a couple days off. What are you doing? Anything interesting? Or
I'm going to relax a little bit. Gonna hang with the family, Lake Arrowhead for a day or two.
All right, Mosse, what about you?
Some TV notes. The 4th season of The Bear drops tomorrow on Hulu.
I love The Bear.
And then on Friday, the third and final season of Squid Game drops on Netflix. This is a true story, Stu. I Googled today most anticipated TV shows the rest of 2025 because I just wanted to refresh my memory of what's coming up. And one of the shows on the list was Love Island.
I was just about to go
there.
there.
There's a new season of that coming.
Oh, that was my note I was going to get in right before. Love Island, by the way, I know I've told you guys previously, the British version was the best by a mile, early seasons. The American version now is the elite version.
Wow.
Okay. It's gotten crazy. There's all kinds of drama.
Hot take.
There's chaos.
Wow.
Lexi, you need to get on this train. It has picked up.
So this is
steam.
like a
It
British
is pop
Office
culture
to
relevant now. Yes.
It's
the
gotten
US
better.
one was always like, it's not that great. As soon as they moved it from, mainstream American network television where you can't really do a lot of the crazy stuff, all of a sudden it went behind the paywall and Peacock and stuff just started flying off the handle. So I'm looking at the time. I got to get back and watch the episode tonight.
All right.
Our producer, Kyla Morris, is a big fan of Love Island. She thinks it's a better TV show than The Wire.
Oh my, stop. Kyla. Yes, I'm with you.
You guys, I haven't watched it yet, so now I am intrigued. I might have to check it out.
I would love to just watch an episode with you.
Oh,
actually,
that would be
phenomenal.
Great. All right, listen. Well, enjoy your time off. We will be back in a few days with more Gold Cup action. We want to thank Yerba Madre for everything that you do, for all the stuff that you give us. Keep downloading and reviewing and rating and subscribing. Oh yeah, smash. Left and right, up and down, everybody. There it is. Smash that button over there on YouTube and all the different channels out there. Like I said, we'll talk to you in a few days. And until then, and as always, my friends, size the day.